Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the incredible weekend of hockey. This is Morning Cup of Hockey alongside Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. We're going to talk about Showtime last night in Chicago, Patrick Kane's overtime winner, some old school hockey over the weekend with Matt Rempe on the New York Rangers, bringing back a lot of fighting and a lot of aggression, maybe even in the NCAA. We saw some fights. Then we'll talk about Nikita Kucherov getting to 100 points at a ridiculous pace. And to wrap up the show, we're going to welcome on former NHL coach, current NHL Network analyst, Bruce Boudreau. So we got a lot going today, a lot of fun to be had. And, man, Colby, I think this is the most we've ever talked, like, over a weekend without doing the show or whatever, right? I feel like I talk to you every day, multiple times throughout the day. Our phone was nonstop all weekend, but how was your weekend?
Well, listen, hockey was really good this weekend. I mean, it first off, obviously once the NFL season is done and Sundays becomes, a day that's up for grabs again, because we know how the NFL just dominates Sunday airwaves. It's pretty great. I mean, even Saturday, you had all the national games Saturday. Sunday had the TNT doubleheader. And look, this weekend, I would say for the first time, you saw a lot of games that had a real playoff feel to them, Johnny. The intensity, the physicality, the fighting, it really did have sort of a playoff vibe to it. And, I want to read a tweet actually to start the show. I'm just going to pull it up here real quick. And I know we're going to really get into the Patrick Kane thing to start, because how could you not, unless you live under a rock. But this was a quote from John Cooper over the weekend that I thought kind of showed why we're inching into where we're inching into. And, he's one of the top 20 winningest coaches in the NHL, right? And he said that he breaks the NHL down to 3 segments. Game 1 through 20, determine what you are, set your foundation if you will become a playoff team before U.S. Thanksgiving, okay? Games 21 to 60, routine, keep the train moving on the tracks, quiet and steady, and avoid as many fires as you can. And then games 60 to 82, turn up time. Put yourself in the best position possible leading into game 1 of the playoffs. Increase intensity from practice to games and ramp up the details on and off the ice. Okay. So Tampa just hit game 60. A lot of teams just hit game 60. I listen when Coop speaks. Anything he says, I'm listening. Okay. Because nobody has been better in these quadrants of the seasons than his team. Even in seasons they haven't been as good the first half, it does seem like that last little 20-plus game stretch, the Tampa Bay Lightning bring their best. And I think John Cooper has, deserves the respect to listen to the weight of what he talks about. So I think between that, Johnny, I think between the fact that, I know we're going to talk about some NCAA stuff that happened this weekend when we get into the fighting discussion. But even those games seemingly are getting a little bit more intense because you're heading into playoff season. So, buckle in, because we've got 22 games left. There's a shitload of things that need to be sorted out. And I think teams are coming into the trade deadline figuring what they need to add. I'm not going to lie, with how close and open things seem to be, and how like teams that separate and then fall backwards seem to keep happening pretty much everybody. This could be a wild last 20 plus games of the year.
I mean, if anything, I watched that Tampa Bay Devils game yesterday, and the Devils are a team that should be going all in, right? Because the East is wide open, like we talked about. And that was a team that didn't even show up in the third period yesterday. Like, there was no urgency, no desperation. And we talk about a team that finished second in the Metropolitan Division yesterday. And here we are around game 60 talking about if they should just be sellers at the deadline. And, now we wanted to start with Kane, but I feel like now my mind is kind of going into this Devils thing. I don't know. Do you want to talk about it a little bit right now off the bat?
Go ahead. Talk about it. So, I know you're all wound up about the articles.
Well, there were a couple articles this morning. Ryan Novozinski and James Nichols both basically just, let out hit pieces on Lindy Ruff. They're saying it's time to fire Lindy Ruff. And even, asking where Tom Fitzgerald is as a GM and what the right or wrong thing to do is. And Colby, what I'm curious in asking you is, are we now at a certain point where it's too late to fire a coach? Or the fact that we haven't passed the trade deadline yet, it's kind of still in that time frame where you can turn things around, with a little bit over 20 games left.
Well, look, I think that's always circumstantial based on if there's somebody out there that you really want and you think fits your group. If the Devils were to identify Craig Berube or Bruce Boudreau, for that matter, who we're having on the show here in about 25 minutes.
He's probably in Jersey right now.
So, yeah, because he was doing NHL Network last night. Now, if there's somebody out there that you identify, then it's never too late. It really isn't. You also have Travis Green on the bench who has NHL head coaching experience. Maybe you think it gives the team a little bit of a jolt. And you're going to maybe go out and try to get a goaltender, because whether they get a goaltender now or not, they still need one for next year. I doubt they're going into next year with Nico Dawes and Schmidt and, whoever else they've kind of rotated through this year. I'll be honest. The Devils have not been a fun team to watch. So when they're not on national television, I don't see them that much.
Yeah.
Their
power play is at a 10% over their last 20 games.
Listen, they've been, they haven't been a good team all year. They haven't been the exciting team that we watched last year where you're like, oh, I want to watch the Devils play tonight. What are the Devils going to do tonight? What are the Hughes, what's Hughes going to do tonight? So I don't subscribe to one size fits all. It's too late. It's not too late.
They're 5 points back of the Philadelphia Flyers right now for third in the Met, and they have a game in hand. It's not far-fetched for them.
No, it's not far-fetched, but I mean, look, it's also, the Flyers have been a better team all year. I mean, what's to say that's going to change now? I mean, I know the Flyers lost both their games this weekend. That Rangers game was awesome. They really probably deserved to at least get a point.
They're a better team. Yeah, they're a better team.
And then like the game against Pittsburgh, I mean, Cal Peterson basically just told the NHL and his team, like, you can't play me, because I don't know if you saw that game at all. I mean, he was, that was as bad of a performance by a goalie in the NHL that I think I've seen this year for Cal Peterson. I mean, that's just reality. I don't mean to pick on the guy, but if you watch that game, those goals just cannot happen. I mean, that's really bad time and time again. I mean, there was probably 5 of the 7 were shots that he's got to make saves on. So,
and the Penguins are so bad that the Flyers still had a chance to win that game.
The Flyers kept coming back, making that 7-6. So, I mean, look, again, the Flyers haven't had Konechny, but I think they've been the better team. I'll stay with the fact that I think the Flyers will make the playoffs. I really do. So it's going to be tough for the Devils, because I'm not counting against Tampa. Hell no. Detroit with an incredibly emotional win last night, which we'll get to. They're playing good. They're playing good hockey. I mean, yesterday was a little bit of a shit show, the fact that they even let that game get to overtime, but that was an emotional game. Kane coming back. They had the ceremony retiring Chris Chelios' jersey before the game. So you've got the zoo that comes with that whole situation. And look, it's starting to look like Steve Yzerman, the Yzer plan is working. And, Patrick Kane, man, I mean, they bring him in. He's doing well off the hop. The team struggles. Then they start to do well at the same time. Then he gets injured. He misses four weeks, whatever it was, about a month. And man, he comes back, and boy, does he look like Patrick Kane of old right now. I mean, he is just a couple of goals the other night, the game winner in overtime last night. I mean, Kane, Johnny, looks I'm not surprised by this, by the way. Like, I foresee Patrick Kane is still talented enough to be a point-a-game player in the NHL. I mean, 80-plus points on a good hockey team. Kane, that's what Kane's going to get you. And if I'm Detroit, I'm getting that guy an extension right now. I am not letting him get through this season into free agency without a contract, because somebody could come and offer him a huge deal. They could. Based on what
he's going to end up in Boston next year. He's going to be every original 6 team before his career's over.
I totally disagree with that. I know you're kidding.
That was a joke. Yeah,
I know you are, but only because he doesn't fit the way Jim Montgomery wants to play. Jim Montgomery wants overspeed, fast hockey.
Full joke.
I know. I'm just, but you're not the only person who said that. A lot of people have said that seriously. But let's go to the United Center from last night. Well, look at 88. I mean, it's like pond hockey, Johnny. This looks like the Creator game.
I was laughing the whole time just because you see Kane already start to turn north and go up the ice before Detroit even has possession of that puck. You know he wants that goal. I was giving him shit this morning for not really back checking and watching that 3-on-2 develop, but in that moment, how could you not cherry pick for this goal, right? And in perfect Kane fashion, he goes high glove side, does the Showtime Selly right to the Chicago fans. And I had
You
some
see him?
buddies that were in the crowd last night,
He's
and they were cheering
mouthing
for him.
Showtime.
And they were cheering for him last night.
And I
they
said
should
on
have.
our show last week on Thursday, if he scored, the United Center would go to their feet. You can see all the fans up on their feet cheering for that goal. And look, Ken Daniels, the play-by-play guy for Detroit, I want to give him some love here too. He absolutely nailed that call. I mean, I know that the game was on NHL Network, so you were forced to watch the NBC Chicago feed. At least you got Panger on there to keep you entertained. Panger obviously is a guy that everybody loves to listen to. But if you have a chance, go find a video of this on social media and listen to Ken Daniels, who's the broadcaster, longtime broadcaster for the Detroit Red Wings, because man, that is poetry. That was so good. I was even said to my wife, I'm like, listen to how good this call is. Like, I just have such an appreciation for those guys who can nail those big moments. And that was such a big moment. And Kane delivered, Ken Daniels delivered, but you know who didn't deliver, in my opinion, Johnny? Do you know who didn't deliver? The NHL. They did not deliver.
I was going to say Bedard, but I actually thought he
played I'm not. Listen, Bedard's 18.
No, I know. Yeah.
Listen, he, you know what? He had a good game. He had a point.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably all juiced up in front of 21,000. He threw the hit on Kane. I saw Kane's quote after the game. That was pretty funny. They'll be future teammates one day, I think. I really do think that. But anyways, here's why the NHL let us down yesterday. And you don't have to chime in because I know you don't want to say anything about the NHL.
Saturday too. I had to find a stream yesterday for that game. I couldn't watch
Saturday and Sunday. We have two games that are big games. Okay. And Saturday, Leafs versus Avs. You're talking about so many star players. Okay. Why is that not a national television game? Why is that put on NHL Network, which a lot of people, which I didn't realize this. I get NHL Network with my Comcast package, but a lot of people don't get NHL Network.
I don't even have NHL Network. Yeah.
So a lot of people couldn't watch that game. When games are on ESPN Plus, everybody out of market can get them. Because at this point, if you're a hockey fan, chances are you have NHL Plus. Okay. Because you can watch every game from every team out of market. Now, if you're just a casual hometown fan, that's one thing. But most people have that bundle where you get, ESPN Plus, Hulu, Disney, whatever. You know what I mean? So that is great. You can pick which broadcast you want, home or away. If you like one set of announcers and you don't like, it really is great. I really do like ESPN Plus, and that's not because I work for ESPN. I like the product. Especially, I don't necessarily like the exclusives, but I like the regular games where you can choose who you get to listen to. I think that's super powerful. But how do you not have Leafs Avs on national TV somewhere? And then you've got Patrick Kane, one of the biggest stars, the best American-born of all time, okay, currently playing on a Sunday back in Chicago against, for the Detroit Red Wings, original six matchup. There's so many boxes that this checks. Connor Bedard, okay, no NFL. How is this not a game that is more widely available to people? It goes to overtime. Kane gets the breakaway. You couldn't have written this up any more dramatic. And honestly, I bet you most people saw a highlight on Twitter. They didn't even get to see the game. So, the NHL's inability to flex and to, be nimble with their broadcast, it's got to be better. It really does. And the NFL does it. They flex games out of the 4 p.m. into Sunday night. and look, I'm not going to pretend to fully understand the TV deals and how that all works. And I know it would cost more money to change the schedule and change travel and all that. I do know, a little bit about that, having, worked in this industry, but just two huge misses, in my opinion, to not have those games more available to people, because not enough people have the NHL Network, Johnny, and you're a good example of that. So,
well, it was also Hockey Day in America, and TNT had the Devils and Lightning game over the Blackhawks and Red Wings original 6 game. And knowingly in advance too, it was also Chris Chelios' jersey retirement night. So something that was cool too, which would have been nice to hear, was like maybe a Patrick Kane pregame interview with a packed barn for warm up, because that ceremony was before the game started. So the place was filled for warm ups. And then obviously you missed the opportunity to talk to him like on the bench after the game, like, one of those, Emily Kaplan post-game interviews, which I love. She did a great job with Matt Rempe over the weekend. It would have been amazing to hear her talk to Patrick Kane on the bench after the game.
Put him with the panel,
Jackie or the panel, like anyone.
That's Kaner never smiles, and like after the game he was smiling. I mean, Kaner's usually so serious when he deals with the media, and so he never shows the media any bit of his personality. He hasn't for years, ever since he had stuff going on in Chicago, we'll call it, and it was just a great opportunity with a great finish that a lot of people unfortunately had to miss, because they just, they didn't flex. They got to flex. Yeah. These networks got to get their shit together and start flexing games and making changes and making decisions. And you're right. Look, Chris Chelios, the guy played 3 million games in the NHL. He played for 3 million years. He's friends with every celebrity from New York City to LA. I saw a picture last night of Kid Rock and Jeremy Roenick together in the atrium at the United Center. The one thing I'll say, the Blackhawks aren't afraid to spend money, on stuff like that. And it looks like they went all out for that jersey retirement. I was there in the building working the game when they did the Hossa jersey retirement. And while Hossa, obviously is a little more people, he's a little more recent. Look, Chelios is basically a living.
That's kind of wild that Hossa had his jersey retired before Chelios.
Yeah, I heard there was some sort of deal cut with that whole situation of let us trade you, or let us move your money to I think it was the Phoenix Coyotes. They got rid of his money and we'll retire your jersey. Because he had no trade, no move, and even though he was out, he had to okay that. So that's just what I heard. I have no idea if that's true or not. But
also I love that Chelios in his speech was like, "Don't go stealing my thunder, Kaner," and then Kaner scores the overtime winner. And I actually got tricked. I thought there was a real Mo Sider Twitter account, and like a Twitter that has Mo Sider's name in it, looks pretty legit, tweeted like 88 didn't listen, and I thought it was the real Mo Sider, but
well, he made a comment like, "Hey, you'll end up back here in the end, just like you should." Obviously, Chris Chelios went to Detroit, won cups in Detroit. So obviously there you could see some similarities. Maybe Kane gets another cup. I don't think Detroit's a cup team this year, but maybe next year, maybe the year after. Like, I just think Patrick Kane has a lot of good hockey left in him. I really do.
He's 36, right?
No, he wouldn't be 36. He'd be closer to like 30. I'd say he's 35. Because he's but 36 and 35 are different, Johnny.
Well, you made it seem like it was going to be a huge difference.
Well, I'm thinking because he's an
88 birth year, right?
He's an 88 birth year, but he's a very young 88 birth year because he was with the 89 draft class. He's drafted with the 89s. So yeah, he would probably have just turned 35. So he'll be 35 next season. He'll play and start next season as a 35-year-old. But listen, I think he could play till he's 38. I mean, he probably wants to play till he's 40. He loves the game as much as anybody I've ever seen or been around. I played with Kaner. And then I worked in Chicago for 2 years while he was there, and I was between the benches and got to watch it firsthand. He is as beloved in the city of Chicago as I've ever seen an athlete really anywhere. I mean, honestly, like he's that beloved in that city. I think it's well-deserved. Chicago is his home. I know for a fact he bought a big old house there. When his career's over, that's where he's going. In the summer, that's where he's going. That's where his significant other is from, the mother of his child. Maybe he's got two by now. I'm not really sure at this point, but it was a great night. It really was. It was a great finish. And listen, man, when the lights are on, we can always count on Showtime to be Showtime.
Yeah. And, I think we've done a pretty good job here talking about Patrick Kane over the last 10 minutes or so, but I know we have a lot to get into before we welcome on Bruce Boudreau. We got to talk about Matt Rempe and just this old school hockey feel that not only he's brought to the Rangers, but he's bringing it around the league, because it seems like right now, every team the Rangers play, they have a guy on the other side that, either wants to fight him or he's going to go after. So I had a misinterpretation last night. Matthew Olivier skated up to Matt Rempe to check on him and see if he was feeling okay from the fight against Delorier, who's a heavyweight in the NHL. And then what? You were going to say something?
Well, I mean, we have the tweet and a quote from him, which is our tweet of the night. So let's just show the tweet, because you're paraphrasing and you're not really doing the best job of it. If I'm being honest, and the tweet. So what Johnny's referring to is he put out a tweet basically saying that Rempe shouldn't have to fight every night, and guys are going over to him in warmups challenging him. Fake news, Johnny. Because what really transpired was that Olivier went over to Rempe, and I told him, great tilt, and I hope you're doing all right, because that was a tough one. And then he said, yeah, I'm good. And then first shift, Rempe went over to Olivier and asked him to go. So nobody challenged him. He just came over to basically do what everybody else in hockey has done and appreciate the old school nature, appreciate the fight with Nick Delorier, which was one of the greatest fights that I've seen all season in a long while. Two guys squaring up, not a lot of, jersey grabs / protecting oneself. It was just hold with the left,
haymakers,
throw with the right, and just hammer. I mean, this was great. Delorier held his own against a guy who's a hell of a lot bigger than he is. Rempe held his own against a guy who's got a hell of a lot more NHL fights than he does. But this happens 3 minutes into the hockey game, Johnny. And to me, this completely set the tone for what felt like a playoff game between the Flyers and the Rangers.
And then Matt Rempe ends up scoring the game-winning goal too. So, give the kid some credit. As much as he's fighting, he's also contributing. Last night, he makes a huge play against Columbus too.
You think he's going to be a 50-goal scorer, don't you?
Shut up. No. But I did jokingly say he could be a 100-fight player in a year. That was a joke.
Love that number 100.
That was a joke. But, what are your thoughts on this? Because, this is a young kid coming into the NHL. He's obviously feeding off of this energy and feeling a ton of momentum. And, there are times where I think he shouldn't have to feel necessary to accept every fight. This one he chose, but he's now, and people are saying it's been 3 official fights in 5 games, but people aren't counting when he fought Jonas Siegenthaler briefly against the Devils after he threw that huge hit on Nathan Bastian. So to me, it's been 4 fights in 5 games. And I don't think a young kid should feel like he has to do that. It doesn't seem sustainable to me. But again, if that's what he wants to do, what do we do here? What are we talking about here, Colby? What are your thoughts on that? If it's kind of his decision to go after guys or ask guys to go, rather.
Yeah, my question to you would be why do you feel like it's your job to police him and say what you think he should and shouldn't do?
I'm not saying it's my job. I'm saying as far as his career and his sustainability, can he keep this going? Because to me, at some point, it's just going to end up getting him hurt. No, fighting every game.
I mean, he's not going to fight every game. You come into the
4 out of
NHL,
5.
right? But I'm just saying he's played 5 games. Okay, we're 60% into the NHL. We're 60 games into the NHL, right? So he hasn't fought 60 times in 60 games. He came into the league. He wants to make a statement. Okay, he wants to show people this is my skill set. This is what I bring to the table. He wants to do it with a punch. The Devils thing was off of a little bit of a dirty hit. Okay, yeah. When you throw dirty hits, you're going to answer for them. Okay, and look.
So you thought that was a dirty hit?
You know what? I didn't like the fact that who did he hit? Oh, Bastian.
Nathan Bastian.
Bastian. Yeah, I didn't like the fact that he was leaned over for an extended period of time. It's not like he turtles in at the last second and then Rempe hits him.
Yeah.
I thought that there was enough time there where you didn't have to do it. But at the end of the day, this is a fourth line guy who's got to finish his checks to stay in the lineup. He's got to play physical. So, I think it's a penalty you'll take. It is what it is. It's part of his game. It's part of his style. And at the end of the day, man, listen, guys want to play. Guys will do anything to get in. Sometimes you got to fight a little bit early and then you settle into learning time and place. So at the end of the day, the only thing that I'm going to say for him in specifically, good for him. This is what he wants to do. This is how he wants to make his mark. Fighting is a part of the NHL. Look at how that fight against Delorier set the tone for one of the better games that I've seen all season. A 2-1 game that had you on the edge of your seat for 60 minutes. It didn't need to be 8-7 or 6-5 because the intensity was that of a playoff game. So I have zero problem with what Rempe's doing. At the end of the day, it's his decision. All the people out there that are being super negative about it and they're talking about concussions and CT and this and that. Listen, you want to sit behind your computer, you want to sit behind with your pen as a writer, whatever the case may be, and you want to dictate things that you have no idea about. Okay, you have no idea about. If Matt Rempe wants to drop his gloves and fight, he's going to do it. Just like UFC fighters. They decide they want to get in the octagon, take a chance at making millions and millions of dollars, and they understand the risks that come with it. And those are things that they're signing up for, and they're deciding.
And guess what? He lost that one against Olivier yesterday. He's going to want him back on Wednesday night because these two teams play again Wednesday night at Madison Square Garden, and he's not going to just shy away from it.
Yeah.
I think.
Listen,
this fight was unreal.
Olivier's a tough customer, man.
Yeah.
He is, and you're right. He took it to Rempe here. He really did. Hard to have two big emotional fights like that back to back. I think it takes a lot out of you. But Olivier, put him down. But look, Olivier didn't go up to him and challenge him on the first shift. He didn't do it. He probably had the mentality of like, look, because fighters, they have a code for the most part, especially the heavyweights. And he probably felt like, you know what? I'm going to give this kid an opportunity to get into the game. Maybe if it needs to happen, it'll happen. Maybe not. You know what I mean? But that was Rempe because he wants to set the tone for his team. He'll have to learn. There are times to drag your team in. There are times where you don't need that type of thing. I'm not. Go ahead.
No. I was going to transition. So finish your thought.
I'm not advocating to see 3 fights a night in hockey. That those days are done, right? They are. But don't take it out of the game. It needs to stay in the game. It's a part of it for many reasons. And it's always telling as we talk about, fight in the NCAA or maybe we'll wait because I think, we've got Bruce who's ready to jump in here and we can even ask him about it. But the reality is per usual, we see all the people who have never played the game on one side of it and all the people who play the game or played the game on the other side of it. Well, maybe we should listen to the people who actually played the game. That's just a thought when it comes to these types of hot button topics.
Well, do you want to show the clip of the NCAA fight? Because that was something like I've never seen before.
Let's bring Bruce in here on the show and let I will ask him if he saw it and get his opinion. Nobody better to ask than him.
All right. Well, we're welcoming on now someone who's coached over 1,000 games in the NHL, an NHL Network analyst, Bruce Boudreau. It's an honor to have you on here. Really happy that you're joining us this morning. So thank you ahead of time for your time.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. I just caught the tail end of it and just assumed you were talking about some sort of fighting.
Yep.
we certainly were. We were talking about Matt Rempe and his couple of fights. There was also a big fight, which you rarely ever see in the NCAA. I don't know how much you keep your eye on that stuff, Bruce, but just that the age-old debate of does it belong in the game? Does it belong in the sport? This was from an ASU versus Alaska game over the weekend, Division I hockey game out in Alaska. And you could just see the energy that it's, the benches are up, the crowd is up. Now, granted, you should never leave the penalty box. I don't condone that. I don't think that's the kind of stuff we need to have in hockey anymore, but you can fight in juniors and you can fight in pro. So I'm like, why do we take it out of the game for a few years in college?
Well, people get mad at college too, you can hit a guy the wrong way and tick a guy off in college, junior, pro. Listen, I was watching a video a couple of weeks ago of a whole bunch of 11-year-olds going at it. And I was laughing but they were throwing hard. And I don't think you're ever going to, that's the one thing about hockey. You're never going to take it completely out of the game. But I think they've done so much to curb it. There's hardly ever, it's nowhere near what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And then beyond that, it was really crazy. But this weekend, obviously, Rempe, if he had played in Arizona, probably wouldn't have got the attention that it got. But the fight with Delorier was unbelievable. So every other tough guy in the league is looking to, hey, can I fight this young guy right away? And I think sometimes you can't win them all. And he took a licking a little bit in Columbus, but man, I'll bet you became a folk hero in New York over the weekend.
Oh man, the Rangers play at home on Wednesday night against Columbus again. And if I'm Peter Laviolette, I'm starting Matt Rempe. The ovation he's going to get from the fans that night when they announce his name, I think you got to kind of play into this while it's happening, right?
Well, if I was Peter, and I'm sure he did, go over and he says, hey, you're big and strong, and everybody's going to look to fight you because you're new. So, but you don't have to fight everybody. And he's done enough of it in the first week, but I will bet you the New York fans will be clamoring for a fight on Wednesday night. And the anticipation, I bet you the sales and the go up, and everything is, it's really wound up in the Garden before the game. And you'll be able to watch the tapes on warm up, and everybody will be following those two guys again to see if they have a little chat at center ice type thing. But like I said, you can't fight every day. I remember there was a referee, a really great referee in the NHL about 25 years ago named Paul Stewart, but he was also a player from Boston. And the first time he got traded back to Boston, and he was a tough guy, Paul. He fought John Wensink, Terry O'Reilly, and Stan Jonathan, from the old Bruins, all in one game, and it was the biggest moment of his life. But according to him. But that stuff happens. But hockey, you never see more than one fight going on at a time. You don't see the 2 and 3, the line brawls that you used to have even 10 years ago. So, Gary Bettman's done a great job in cutting it right down, but you're never going to completely take it out of the game. It's one thing that, you can make rules, but the emotions get up in hockey, and there's a lot of physical contact, and there's a lot of talk that goes on the ice that we don't know about, and tempers flare.
Well, I think you do know about it because you've been, as a player, you've been in this game. You've been in this game for a very long time, obviously. And so it is great to hear you say that, because it just always feels like the people that have been in it and closest to it feel one way, and the people who have never really truly been in it feel a completely different way. And, I kind of bang my head off the wall with a lot of different subjects and topics like that, Bruce. But I'm just curious, did you ever have a guy on one of your teams that you had to have that conversation with? Like you said, the one Peter probably will have to have with Matt Rempe if he hasn't. And how hard or difficult are those conversations? Because a lot of those guys, this is how they feel like it's their way to stay in the league and play and make an impact for their teams.
Yeah, but and every one of them, and I've had many conversations with every team has at least one guy that's a pretty physical player. I played with a player, I don't know how good your memories are, played with a guy that played in the Islanders for a lot of years named Mick Vukota. Yeah. And when he was in the minors with me, he fought in 22 straight games. and he was my winger. I had to tell him. I said, Mick, you got to slow down here, man. Like, I mean, I know you've already got the record, but I mean, and I know you want to make it, but let's work on the skills. But you get it every time I played. Listen, George Peros was a rookie coming right from Princeton to me, and I had to tell him, George, I know you want to prove yourself, but you don't have to do it every night. I've had so many of those guys that have done the same thing, and they don't. But I mean, they know what their job is and how they stay in the league. But Rempe doesn't. He's gained this reputation already. Like, I mean, he just has to go out there and play a little bit now and prove that he can stay in the league and work on his skills, because everybody knows he can fight, because he picked on two tough dudes this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely unbelievable entertainment. And when you talk about Vercote, I actually skated with his son for many summers. I'm a Long Island boy. He still lives out on Long Island, so I've gotten to know him a little bit. But Bruce, I'm really curious about something that's also happened over the weekend, not fighting, but the way coaches have handled the media. There's a lot of different narratives that are sometimes created from the media that can spin something, for a team. Like right now, we're seeing it happen this morning with New Jersey. There's been articles about Lindy Ruff, and obviously he had that quote about the excess pressure coming from media about their power play. But in your position with teams you've coached, when there are teams struggling, is there a strategy to how you go about the media, or is it sometimes just pure emotion? Because right now, there's a lot happening with multiple teams in the NHL when it comes to that.
Well, I mean, you know what? As a coach, you go about your business. Like, I mean, hopefully it's just white noise and what you're hearing. Media has a tendency, writers. I mean, and I know a lot of them, obviously, but I mean, there's some that make stuff up because they think this is what the narrative should be, and then they put it out there, and it's really bothersome. I mean, there's a lot of media guys out there that sort of, I'd say, like the boss of the team, he'll give him, whether it's the owner or not, he gives them little scoops so he doesn't say bad things about the team, type thing, and they throw fire onto the scene a little bit. But I mean, listen, we all know, I think, that if New Jersey's goaltending wasn't at an 880 or an 870 clip, that they wouldn't be having this conversation. It's not the coaching. I mean, Lindy Ruff has proven over 20. I mean, he's been in the business over 25 years of how great a coach he is. So, I mean, sorry, my thing is a little off. There we are. When you're holding it in the air with your phone, it's
Get a workout.
Yeah, you need a tripod or something.
Yeah, I do. But I mean, I'm in Secaucus right now, ready to, going on the air. So I didn't bring my computer or anything up with me. But everybody knows how good a coach is, with Lindy is now. Last year, they started saying fire Lindy, and then he goes on a tear, and then it's, they give him a standing ovation at the end. Yeah. So, I mean, it's fickle. I don't like it when reporters guess, because it always catches steam, and somebody else picks it up that doesn't know the situation, and they write about it, and listen, these coaches, they have lives and they have families, and it's tough on them, and nobody wants to win more than Lindy Ruff. I'm telling you right now. I mean, he's gotten very, very close to the Holy Grail and didn't get it, but so I mean, and he was an assistant for 3 or 4 years in the with the Rangers. He finally got back to being the head coach, which is where he belongs. And so, I mean, those kind of things bother me a little bit.
Yeah. And you know what, Bruce, I took a little bit of a different approach to this Lindy Ruff quotes and comments, where he said the media is putting pressure on our power play. And then a lot of people kind of jumped all over him for that. And I actually took a little bit of a different thought process. And I said, you know what? I think Lindy Ruff said that to take the spotlight off the power play and put it on himself, because that was just my opinion, because I just think what we don't realize is someone like Lindy Ruff is pretty smart. You don't last in this job for as long as he has and as well liked as he is without being a smart individual and knowing how to manipulate, whether it's your roster, the media, whatever. And I just thought, I didn't think it was that ridiculous of a comment as everybody else did, because I thought he did it for a reason. Now we're talking about Lindy. We're not talking about the power play anymore. That has been dreadful, just to be fair.
Yeah.
So I thought he did that for that reason. And I think that's probably where Johnny was getting at with asking you if there's a strategy on how to deal with these things.
You know what? You're very well right. I never thought of it from that angle right away, but coaches have a tendency to want to taking the pressure off the players and putting it on themselves. And I think we've all done it at one point. And I'm sure, I'm not sure about anything right now, but I'm sure that that would be something that Lindy could possibly do.
Well, one thing I got to ask you, sort of on that note, and Colby's going to give me shit for this because I am putting my Rangers hat on a little bit. I grew up a big New York Rangers fan. So I was in high school for that 2011 series when you said, I think prior to Game 4, that you couldn't even hear the fans at Madison Square Garden, and the Rangers go up 3-0, and they let you hear it at Madison Square Garden chanting, "Can you hear us?" And then you guys come back from down 3-0, win 4-3 in overtime. I got to ask you, just being behind that bench, getting the fans going, and then kind of, getting the last laugh. What is that like from your position?
First of all, it was a great memory. I'm glad somebody remembers it. But I was on a Washington radio station, and they were asking me, "Hey, you coach the Caps. Whose fans are better?" Okay, and what am I supposed to say? The Ranger fans are much better than the Capital fans? No, I said, you know what I'm supposed to say? The Capital fans were louder than the Ranger fans. And so knowing New York people like I do, they took that to heart because it was on the back page of the Post the next day, like in big red letters. And it also said, because I had said something about Madison Square Garden. They were going through the renovations at that point in time. And we got down 3-0, and it was like I felt like Dennis Potvin was in the arena again. But when we tied it up, there was never a better feeling when Jason Chimara scored that double overtime goal, I think, when we came back and tied it up. So it was a pretty cool moment, but you have to love the passion of the Ranger fans. I think I fell in love with them that moment when they were just screaming it like, "Can you hear us?" and "Can you hear us?" I'm going, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, were you just sitting there though for a second, like, "Oh no, what did I just do to myself?"
Yeah, well, I didn't even think they would know. I was just doing it in Washington, but I mean, and we didn't have the social media that we have today, so I was just thinking, well, I'm just telling the local radio station that our fans are better than their fans. Just like if they had asked which team is better, I would have said the Caps at that moment.
Yeah, no, that's you gotta listen. That's your team. That's where you're all in. If anybody, we've seen this out of you your whole career from afar as a player. You've always been all in everywhere you've gone, and that's why, for me, one of the last things I want to talk about with you, Bruce, is Hershey. And I live in Villanova, PA, a little bit outside of Philly. I'm well familiar, not just with the American League team that, we played against the Hershey Bears when I was in Providence, time and time again. But going back to my youth hockey days, playing against their young teams, taking part in their Quebec team all these years ago.
Were you on the Hershey Quebec team?
100 years ago, it seems like.
Wow. Was Doug Yink still the man?
He was around, and I remember him. And I've skated in the old, Hershey Park building. I don't know if you guys have done anything to it now, but I know you're deeply involved with that program, and I always hear really good things about the work that you've done out there in Hershey and the commitment that you've made to that program and that community. So, is that just from when you coached there and you fell in love with it, or how does all that come about?
Well, pretty well. I mean, when I coached there in 2006, and then when I got brought up to the Caps, I just kept the place that I just finished buying, and because it was so close, and just moved back there in the summer. And then when I went to Anaheim, I kept the place because I didn't want to live in California in the summer. And so, I mean, and then when I got let go in Minnesota, I thought, where do we want to live? And it seemed like it was sort of local. Like, I mean, I had my kids are all over the place, but I mean, we loved it there so much. We went there. We started a junior program. Um, Now we're going to have 2 junior teams there, and we play it in the old barn, which is
Amazing.
fabulous. Yeah,
Amazing.
I mean, it seems like I have most of my friends there. So I mean, and we're starting to get involved in me and my wife and son in the minor hockey organizations there. So, and we still go to the Bears games. So I mean, it's a fabulous community, and if you've been to Hershey, they're sold out every night. So I mean, it's a
Every
great,
night.
very similar to Providence. I mean, I hated going to Providence just because they always had good teams. But I mean, it's a really great town. I'm glad I'm there.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, I'm not far from there, so we hear about it. I'm slowly inserting myself. My wife and family and I just moved back from Chicago because that's where I was doing TV the last couple of years for them. And now that I'm back in this Philly area, Bruce, I've started to sort of insert myself and do some stuff with youth hockey. So I'm kind of getting up to speed on it all around here. But
Cool.
I got one last question for you, and this has been something Johnny and I have been arguing and fighting and yelling and screaming at each other over. And he's brought the whole Rangers fan base down on me. I've got the support of every other fan base around the NHL, but we've been going at it about Alexis Lafreniere on this show now for the last couple of episodes. And while I have said I think this kid has really developed, this is the first time in his career he looks like a top 6 player. Johnny has bet me that he sees Alexis Lafreniere.
We never made a bet.
Yes, we did. He bet me, and we have receipts to prove it, that he sees Alexis Lafreniere as a 100-point type of player in the NHL. Me personally, I'm like, I could see him being a 30-goal, 40-assist type of guy, grow into that. This is a guy who's got 39 points career high, 300 games or so into his NHL career. Do you think he's a 100-point player in the NHL? I mean, am I crazy here?
Go easy on me, Bruce, please.
Well, I think he's a good player, and I think, if you look at in past history, Guy Lafleur didn't take off till his 3rd year, 4th year in the NHL, but he's not Guy Lafleur, and I think he's going to be a really good player. I just don't see wingers, unless your name is Kucherov, getting that kind of points. You look at all the players that get 100 points. I mean, when I'm thinking this year, I mean, you've got McKinnon, you'll get the McDavids, you'll get Draisaitl, you'll get Pettersson, you'll get Miller. They're all centermen, and those are the guys that get 100 points plus. That's why Kucherov is such a special player. Austin Matthews, these are the centers are the guys. When you play wing, a lot of times you're sort of limited, like Pasternak, as great as he is. If he gets 100 points, and he's the best winger in the league, I would think that pure winger, that it's going to be a great season. I don't know. I think if he was to get 75, 80 points, I think that would be classified a tremendous get for him. But he certainly, I think now that he's established himself as a top 6, that, I mean, he and playing with the guys he's playing with is capable of getting those kind of numbers. I mean, it was unfortunate last year because he was playing in a top 6 even last year until they traded for Tarasenko and Kane. Then all of a sudden you get bumped down a little bit, and it does a little something to your ego a little sometimes.
And he's not getting first power play time too, but it seems like Bruce kind of sides with me a little bit more than you there, Colby.
No.
I'm not gonna.
I didn't throw it to the 100. I said 80. So
I
was sort of in the middle, right? Trying to neither one of you guys mad at me.
You're being kind. You're being kind. But we do have a couple more for you. Just want to thank you again for your time. But something I'm curious about, and I've actually, I do cover the Rangers. So I have asked Pierre Laviolette this question, but I think that every coach and every team and every situation is a little bit different. But with your experience behind the bench, do the fans ever somewhat dictate maybe your decision making at any point? Like when a guy is maybe one goal away from a big milestone or having a big game, or there's, maybe let's say Patrick Kane returning to his hometown team, like something like that along those lines. Is there ever a moment where the fans, whether you're home or away, can affect a coach's decision making?
I don't really think so. Maybe at the start of the game, you start him. You start a guy that's traded, and you go against his old team and you play it. If there's an empty net situation and it's a 2-goal empty net thing, and a guy's got 2 goals, you might put him on. But it depends on where you are in the schedule or in the standings and everything. But I can't remember me going out of my way to do something like that just for the player if it was something you wouldn't do to win a game. Now, if you're winning by a lot, you do things, you play guys a little bit more. Like, for an example, 2 years ago, JT Miller had 98 points going into the last game. He got a point early. Like, I just kept double shifting him because we were out of the playoffs. It's the last game of the year, and
Winger
to do everything to try to score that, get that 100th point, and he didn't get it that night. But those are the things that coaches will do, I think. But I don't think they'll do anything. Winning is always the most important thing, and we never lose sight of that.
And I got to ask you one more, just because you coached Alexander Ovechkin for a long time, but I know deep down you're a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So when it comes down to it at the end of the day, who are you rooting for to have the all-time goals record, Alexander Ovechkin or Auston Matthews?
Well, it's going to take Auston another 8 years or 9 years to maybe 10 years to break it. I mean, because when you get older, you're supposed to get slower. That's what Alex is doing right now. But I mean, as a Toronto boy playing for the Leafs, sort of have to be a Leaf fan. But
our producer loves this, by the way.
Yeah.
As a guy that coached Alex in his prime for 5 years, I mean, and got to know the man personally, you really want to see him, do well and hopefully break the record. I know Wayne wants it. Wayne's a good friend of mine too. So, I mean, I'm going to look at, maybe they can all stop at 891 or something like that and nobody break it.
Just want everyone to win. But Bruce, we really appreciate your time this morning, and it's been a lot of fun watching you on NHL Network, and definitely hope to see you back in the league someday if you still want to coach.
I would like to. I wouldn't say no if anybody asked me. Just putting it out there.
All right. Well, there you go. We got to clip that. We got to make sure we get it sent around. But yeah, great talking to you. It has been, when you talk on NHL Network, hockey fans should make sure they're not looking at their cell phones. They should listen, because you've been around the game forever. You've done it at every level. You weren't handed a red carpet and said, here's an NHL bench. You had to play your way through, coach your way through. So it's great talking to you here this morning. Thanks for your time, Bruce.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it, guys. You continue to have a great show. Okay.
I have one favor, though, before you go, Bruce.
Okay.
Next time you're around the Hershey Bears, Chase Prisky is one of my best friends. Can you please give him a hug for me?
I'll do that. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Thanks, Bruce.
All right.
What an awesome guy. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Had to throw in the Pritz shout out. He'd be pissed at me if I didn't. But we do have a lot of hockey on tonight. I know we're kind of wrapping up the show here. We got 4 games: Ottawa versus Washington, New York Islanders.
Wait, are we not going to at least touch on the fact that how he answered the Lafreniere question? Or are you just going to
smack it right in the middle for us? He didn't pick a side.
No. The reality is he said 75, 80 points ceiling.
All right. Do you want to talk about this?
That's not 100. How are you going to be in denial? We just had 1,000+ game head coach.
I'm dying on this hill. You know that. But
I don't want you to die, Johnny. Stop making bets where you die in the end, okay?
Can you be honest, though? Can you be honest, please, with all of our listeners? When Alexi Lafreniere scored that second goal against Jersey, was there a small part of you that was like, oh, fuck, here we go?
I laughed. I was laughing.
Yeah. Dude, I was in the press box fucking crying, laughing.
The best part of it is I don't dislike the Rangers. I was loving when Kane went there last year. Okay. I just think that this take is insane. I think that this guy's a good hockey player. Your whole fan base is like coming for me like, told you. 16 goals is not a told you. Let me fucking tell you, it's not told you. Okay,
I'm just gonna keep
so
rounding him up.
I mean, listen, if he gets 45 points this year, and then maybe next year he goes to 60, maybe after that it's 70, and then he makes $7.5 million, $8 million a year as a 70-point guy in the NHL, 25 or 30 goals a year, which again, like, I think is a lot for him based on what we've seen. But listen, you heard what Bruce said. We don't have to keep going at it about this, but you heard what he said. Okay. Okay. All right.
I
So
mean,
games.
it's all hypothetical.
Previewing games tonight. Okay. Ottawa, Washington. I know you're going to put another clown tweet out there tonight, like you did over the weekend, about Ottawa's only 17 points back with 4 games in hand. It can happen. I mean, I'm waiting for that one tonight.
Well, actually, I have a question about that. Honestly, if we can, quick. I know Brady, like Ryan Whitney tweeted about Brady Tkachuk's name being thrown out there. What do you make of that? What do you make of that?
Let me just say what the rule should be in the NHL. Don't trade a Tkachuk. It's never going to work out for you. Never trade a Tkachuk. Okay? Like, never trade a Tkachuk. I don't care if you could get Celebrini in the first overall pick this year for Tkachuk. I still wouldn't trade Tkachuk. I seriously wouldn't do it. And I think the world of Macklin Celebrini. Don't trade a Tkachuk. Horrible decision making if that were to happen. Okay? And look, the Chicklets guys, when the rumor boys come out, it generally comes more true than it doesn't. It really does. So I mean, you cannot trade Brady Tkachuk. We already see what happens when you trade Matthew Tkachuk, what he did for that franchise. Now the other one's in a rebuild. So don't trade a Tkachuk. But props to Shane Pinto, who, I mean, that kid's been awesome since he's been back. He's a guy you go watch play hockey. Like, it's clearly he's an infectious part of that team, and they will be better next year when they have him. A playoff team, we'll see what they do in the offseason at the deadline, but they'll be better with him with 82 games.
Well, they also really do. And listen, I'm just saying this to say it. I don't truly believe Ottawa's going to make the playoffs. Let's be real here. I did before the season started, but right now they actually are 5 games back of Tampa, who's the second wild card spot, and they're 16 points back. But those 5 games in hand, it's a lot of games.
Yeah, but Johnny, you're talking about one team that knows how to dial it up for the playoffs,
I know,
one team that is clueless about the playoffs. So it's not happening. It's not happening. They're not making a push.
But I don't think it's impossible.
Let's not create a dumb narrative. They're not making a push. You can rebet all of your organs next year on the Ottawa Senators. Okay, don't die on that hill. You've got too many hills you're dying
I just
on
said
right
I don't
now.
think they're making the playoffs.
Too many hills. So a couple other games tonight, Johnny. New York and Dallas, the Islanders.
You did an Islanders show last night. You talked about the Islanders.
I did talk a little bit about the Islanders, but I was also honest about that. It's like the Islanders haven't given me a hell of a lot of reason to watch them as of late. I mean, there's always a lot of games on. You pick and choose which teams are entertaining. I watched them play that Stadium Series game, which they blew, which I was happy about, based on their outfit decisions. They got to look in the mirror. They really do. Ownership probably has to look in the mirror and make some hard decisions on the island. But here's a couple of games later in the evening, Johnny, that are pretty important games, right? The LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton looks like shit right now.
Dude,
like
ass.
The way that they are turning the puck over and mismanaging the puck is really bad. I mean, like, they just are in some trouble right now with the way that they're playing
on home ice too. Their last couple of games,
you have to wonder, like, what's Ken Holland sitting there thinking? I mean, because he's got to do something. This team is sputtering right now.
I think it was Calvin Pickard in net against Minnesota, but I watched that game, and I think the Oilers outshot Minnesota like 24-4 in the third period in what was a tie game, and they ended up losing like
4-2.
Yeah, they ended up losing. Well, I think one was an empty net, but they allowed 2 goals on like 3 shots. Yeah, 2 goals on 3 shots against in the third period that they totally dominated.
It's no different than we talked about Cal Peterson with the Flyers to start the show. Like, you can't have you need a guy who you can't have goalies letting in bad goals this time of year. You just can't. You'll never be successful.
Yeah.
And then Boston, Seattle, man. Boston is in a bad way right now. They're blowing leads. 7 leads in the third period this season. Games they haven't won now. 3-3-4 in their last 10. So they're getting points, but they're not playing great hockey. And
5 straight overtime games.
They're not playing great hockey. I don't think Don Sweeney's going out and making a big splash at the deadline. I really don't.
You don't think so? I
I
thought you were
don't.
talking about it last week though, where their goaltending is so elite that why not?
There is, and it's not going anywhere.
Holy voice crack.
Their goaltending. They've got the best tandem in the NHL. Their goalies are not going anywhere. They're not trading Ullmark. But the reality is look what they did this offseason. They had no space. Okay. And they went out and made a bunch of $1 million signings. Listen, if they're smart, they'll give Van Riemsdyk a 2 or 3 year deal and lock him up. Nothing crazy, but they need some cap space and they need to probably make some additions. But I think those are more off-season additions. Like, I just don't think overpaying right now. They have very little in their prospect pool. They don't have a ton of capital. Draft capital. I just think they're probably not doing anything crazy. They may add depth, but I just don't think they're going to do anything big. I just don't think guys are playing well enough where it makes sense. I really don't. It doesn't mean they can't compete in the playoffs, but I just, I don't think it's the year for them to do anything crazy big.
When I saw Witt tweet about Brady Tkachuk, the first thing I thought of was Boston should just get rid of every prospect, every draft pick, everything
They don't have enough prospects.
I know, but that was my first thought.
Brady.
That was my first thought because he would be just the perfect Boston Bruin. No,
I mean, they would have to give up. I mean,
everything.
It's like who on Boston's roster would you take from the NHL roster? Would you even take in a package? You're not giving up Pasta. You're not giving up Marchand. You're not giving up McAvoy.
Patra.
Okay, but that's not getting it done.
DeBrusk.
That's not getting it done.
Yeah, I know.
Like Lindholm, I'd walk away from Lindholm, but I don't think he's played well this year, so I don't think his value is super high right now. So I don't think you want to trade him when his value's at a lowest. They'd want Swayman. I wouldn't give up Swayman.
No.
I'd give up Ullmark if you could package Ullmark and DeBrusk and Grizzly, but Ottawa wouldn't make that trade.
Never.
That's like insane. You'd have to. I don't think the Bruins even have a competitive enough package unless they said, all right, we'll give you David Pastrnak 1-for-1. But who's
that'd be stupid too. Yeah.
But he's doing that. You know what I mean? So he's not. I don't foresee that happening. I really don't. It'd be awesome. Be great to have him in an American big American market, an original 6.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that's where my brain went.
He's also the captain of that team. I mean,
captains get traded though. We've seen it.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I mean, he's a franchise captain.
Yeah.
He really is. He's a guy you want there for 15 years.
All right. So which game for you is the game to watch tonight out of those 4?
I mean, I think probably LA Edmonton, I'd say. I mean, I think Dallas Islanders will be a good game. Dallas has been Dallas all year. The Islanders they
don't get enough love though. Dallas does not get enough love.
For me included. I don't give them enough love.
Yeah.
I'm still not a huge believer, which is probably unfair.
But I mean, they
they'll
played that game in Carolina on Friday night or Saturday night. Kind of a boring game, but a good 2-1 win on the road for them.
Probably those 2 games I would say will be the games that would pique my interest this evening.
Mm-hmm. I'll probably
tune
into Edmonton. Yeah, I'll watch Edmonton for sure. I don't see myself really giving a lot of attention to the Islanders Dallas game. But like you said, I think the Islanders.
We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, of course. But I just don't see. I think I said 3 weeks ago that I think they'd find their way in the playoffs, but now I don't see.
Well, and Washington's sniffing still. We completely don't even talk about them, but they're sniffing around
them all year.
The Flyers have lost 2 in a row, and Washington's won a couple. So they're sniffing still. They're still in it. That's why I think this last 20 games is going to be unusually good because there's so many teams with actual belief, which is why I think the trade deadline could be iffy this year.
Yeah.
I hope not, but it could be.
It's going to be a lot of fun. That's for sure. Any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
Yeah, I'm just so happy Bruce Boudreau agreed with me. That was probably my favorite part of the show.
We kind of jumped over a little bit, but we are going to start doing like a tweet of the night, whether it's something that we think is like the funniest, the smartest, the best,
dumbest,
the worst, the dumbest. So if I think right now our hashtag that we're going with is road, but we got to like maybe type it out. I don't know. We'll figure out a hashtag throughout the week, I guess, as we get going here.
We were thinking the hashtag could be road to 100 in honor of Johnny's super favorite player in the NHL, Alexis Lafreniere. But we do want to hear from you because, like Johnny said, we're going to feature a tweet every day on the show. It's going to be.
We want your voices to be heard too. So.
It's going to be sponsored by Tim Hortons, is it?
Yep.
So maybe we'll get them involved with some stuff. You never know. So we'll start doing that every show, and I think that's all we got today, Johnny.
Yeah, fun show today. Thanks again to Bruce Boudreau. We didn't really get any. Yeah, we didn't get to the chat today. I don't know if something was going on with the chat, but
why there was nothing in it?
Jeremiah wrote something, but there was nothing else going on in the chat. But yeah, I don't know what was going on with the chat today. Usually it's pretty live. Today it wasn't.
We'll have to find out how Jeremiah's trip to. Oh, Vic says we have a ton in the chat. Maybe
I'm not seeing anything on YouTube here.
Did you get maybe you got locked out, but we got to find out from Jeremiah how Miami was. You know, the great Alaskan ventured across the United States to Miami Beach. Maybe he hitched a ride in one of the spy balloons that have been flying over the United States, but we'll have to ask him.
And tomorrow we got Frank Saravalli joining us like he does every Tuesday. And we'll have a fun rest of the week here, you know, as the hockey continues to ramp up toward the playoff push. And then we're in March here. You know, Friday is March 1. I mean, we are, we're getting there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But thanks to everyone in the chat that I wasn't able to see on my end today. Thanks to Bruce Boudreau. Thanks to our producer, Vic. And we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Have a great day.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.